Now for our office. And Gordon over here, the treasurer. Steve is a technology person. Bruce over on the side over there is secretary. We have Waylon over here for fallen veterans. We've got Sharon Bender, programs. And I know I saw Carol. Where is Carol? Carol Taylor. And who did I miss? I know I had to miss somebody. Oh, I missed Dan over here. He was trying to hide.
Yeah, sure.
And then the donut man over here. And I think that's all. Oh, and Erik, our vice president. Thank goodness. Okay, our next is our fallen veterans, and this month we have no fallen veterans.
Bob doing a great job.
Bob doesn't want to speak to us.
Somebody came up to me a little while ago and said, Bob, you're doing a great job keeping everybody up. But what I thought about just the other day was, we don't have any fallen veterans to remember now, but at this meeting, but I want us to remember the fallen veterans in our own lives and extended family. I think about one of my younger brothers, Dan, who's a lieutenant in the Navy, and nuclear subs. And I want you to think about just for a moment some of those in your family who have honored us in the country by representing your country being veterans. Just spend a moment doing that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Now we'll move on to our speaker. This is going to be a short meeting, probably. We don't have a whole lot of things on our agenda. So we'll let Erik talk a little longer. Tell us about his whole military career.
I'll talk as long as you want me to. So, Larry asked if I could just talk about my career. I was, I served in a little bit different era than most of you, actually, probably all of you. I was in the Air Force from 1995 to 2014, retired. I was a JAG officer, it's a judge advocate, an attorney. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, JAG Corps didn't really even exist so much until the 70s, probably. Before that, there were legal officers, there were legal personnel and so forth, but kind of, you know, I think UCMJ came around in the 1950s, and then later there was this push to say, hey, we need to have attorneys, especially defense counsel, who can represent, you know, soldiers, sailors, and so forth, independently, free from the chain of command, and give them good defense when they need it and so forth. So the JAG Corps came about. So I was, back to the beginning, I was born and raised in Minnesota. My dad had been in the Navy in the 1960s, but I wasn't really paying much attention to the military, didn't really even, you know, think that I would make a career of it. Went to college, I went to law school, and then when I was in law school, one of my friends was a year ahead of me, and he went into the Air Force JAG Corps, and kind of, I kept in touch with him, and he told me that it was a pretty good place to have a career. And so when I graduated from law school, I applied and was selected to join the Air Force JAG Corps. For most JAGs, you kind of do your own law school, and then you try to apply, and you interview essentially, and you get picked up for it. And And so I went off to, I came in, I came in as a first lieutenant for 6 months, and then you're promoted to captain, so they give you some credit for your law school, they promote you a little more quickly. And I went off to training. I did not have there was not basic training, at least for Air Force JAGs. It was like 2.5 weeks of what we call Air Force Officer Orientation course down at Gunter Annex, Maxwell Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama. So in 2.5 weeks, they told us how to put on a uniform, march a little bit, although I never marched again for the rest of my career. And just basic military customs and courtesies. We were there with the chaplains and the medical, the docs who come in as officers and so forth. So it was an interesting experience. And then later there was about a 2-month course to just learn about the UCF, military justice and all the other things that JAGs do. I guess on the topic of JAGs, there was a TV show back in the 90s, I think, called JAG. That was the Navy. There was also A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson and various other folks. Very glamorous portrayal of the life of a JAG. I wouldn't say it was quite that way for me most of the time. It was just working in an office for the most part. Although I did deploy a couple of times. Let's see. So I started, my first assignment was at McChord Air Force Base out in Tacoma, Washington. Now it's Joint Base Lewis McChord. I think the Army's they've joined those bases together. I did courts martial. I prosecuted, among other things, military justice related stuff. Prosecuted courts martials, nothing particularly glamorous, mostly folks who pop positive for drug tests or were maybe stealing in the dorms or whatever, or other relatively minor, misdemeanor type level stuff. There were occasional felony level, more significant cases. I didn't end up working on any of those. But the life of a JAG is you're working in a legal office with other lawyers, and there's just innumerable questions that come, just like in real life, I guess. Go ask the lawyers about this, that, or the other thing, whether it's labor law or ethics or, military justice, or we would do legal assistance. We would, do wills and powers of attorney and other legal advice to anybody who's eligible to come in, which would be active duty in the family, retirees and so forth. Which was an interesting experience. You helped out people who with all kinds of different issues and challenges and problems. While there, I served as a special assistant United States attorney, and would prosecute in the federal court people who would wander onto base or drive onto base, which is a federal installation, who were drunk or who had drugs in their car or whatever. All these civilians who happened to come onto the post and get arrested. We had to then go prosecute them in federal court downtown. So that was one of my side jobs there. After that, I went to, in the meantime, I got married while we were there. Shelley, my wife, joined me from Minnesota and in the Tacoma area in Washington. Then from there, we went to Grand Forks, North Dakota, Grand Forks Air Force Base. Which was our closest base to home. So we wanted to be somewhat close to home. Of course, it was cold there, but I was raised in Northwest Minnesota, so it was okay. I was the defense counsel on base, so anybody who got in trouble, whether it was for low-level stuff or criminal stuff, I was their lawyer. So they'd come into me, and it was my job to try to defend them. In most cases, they'd already confessed, and the security forces had already interviewed them, and they confessed, and so there wasn't really much to defend. That's kind of a common thing across military justice, is your cases are pretty open and shut, and they have the evidence and and so forth. But I, that was interesting, and it's an important function. I think that you have legitimate attorneys actually helping and defending airmen, in my situation, who have gotten themselves in trouble, and at least trying to mitigate the sentence that they might get, or help them avoid a bad kind of discharge, or other than honorable discharge, or whatever the case may be. And from there, I would, not in addition to being in Grand Forks, they would need the attorneys to kind of travel around and cover other bases. Sometimes you get 3 or 4 people involved in similar crime. Well, one attorney might represent them all. So I go to Minot or F.E. Warren or whatever, all these other kind of upper Midwest bases and provide defense services for my clients. After a couple of years, I did that for 2 years. That was enough for me. I'd rather be a prosecutor. Your clients very frequently don't tell you the truth and kind of just deal with what they tell you and try to make the best of it. From there, I went to Travis Air Force Base. Then I went back to Grand Forks Air Force Base. I was glutton for punishment. I became kind of the second in charge of the legal office there. And at that stage of my career, I had the chance to kind of specialize in legal practice, and I chose to specialize in government procurement law. So I went to, they sent me out to Washington, D.C., to George Washington University to take a master's of law degree in government acquisition, government procurement. That kind of became the focal point of the rest of my career as I traveled around to various bases. So one of those things that you might think, what do they need a JAG for that? Why can't they just have a civilian attorney? Well, part of the reason they need JAGs to do that is because they deploy you sometimes. They go places and deal with contracting and fiscal matters on the ground as they're trying, in an operation or whatever. So after going through that course, I went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is a big acquisition base for the Air Force. And from there, I went on my first, hold on, get my time right here. I had 2 deployments. My first deployment, and I can't remember what year it was now, 2003, I think. I went to Diego Garcia, an island in the Indian Ocean. This was during the war, the Operation Enduring Freedom. So that's the Afghanistan part of the war. And the Air Force, that's a British owned kind of territory. The Navy had folks there. In fact, if you've read Tom Clancy novels, you'll know about the pre-positioned Navy ships in the harbor at Diego Garcia. So I can vouch that those are there. There's these big ships, cargo ships that are just sitting there with all this equipment and material and tanks and everything else ready to go wherever they need them. The Air Force was operating out of there, flying B-1s up to Afghanistan. So like 1,000 miles away, these B-1s would take off and go fly combat support. And so the Navy had some nice apartment, like actual dorms and so forth for their people. And then the Air Force pilots got to stay there. All the rest of us lived in tents, although they were air-conditioned tents, I would say. But on the other end of the island near the runway, when those B-1s would fire up at 6 a.m. in the morning, the ground would shake from a mile away. It was pretty impressive. So they'd fly off and go do their mission to come back, and we were just kind of there providing, whatever your work was. You were doing your work as a lawyer. It was all kinds. I was the only lawyer there, so it was a matter, military justice and all the other stuff you do. But it was an interesting. If you can ever get to Diego Garcia, it's a very interesting place. It's a 36-mile long kind of harbor-shaped island, no more than a mile wide at any point, and it's a perfect harbor, and it's like a tropical paradise, except that there's nothing. There's no hotel. So I was there for 4 months in the winter of, I guess I was in Grand Forks. So it was the winter of 2003. My wife was home alone with our son in Grand Forks on the Air Force Base there where we live. And it was a very cold winter. When I came back after being in 90-degree weather every day, I got sick because it was really, really cold in Grand Forks. My second deployment happened when I was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I deployed to Kabul, Afghanistan for 6 months. Again, that's part of Operation Enduring Freedom. There was a number of JAGs there. At that time, we were at headquarters at Camp Eggers in Kabul, and we lived in these so-called safe houses over by the embassy, and we would get shuttled back and forth from the camp with these little vans driven by Afghan civilian contractors, and it kind of made you wonder. Now we were armed and so forth, but it kind of made you wonder. One of these guys could just drive us off somewhere and kill us, and it just seemed a little unsafe. But nothing bad happened. The war, it was relatively quiet in Afghanistan at the time. We would go to Bagram, which was a couple-hour drive away. We would go out and meet folks in the countryside without incident, although yeah, we weren't. It was, at least for me, I was only carrying a 9mm, there's not much I could do to defend myself probably if there was a problem. And it was an interesting experience. I would say, I mean, Afghanistan is a very interesting country. It was like, living, we'd go out in the countryside and we'd see camel caravans and people living like it was, 2,000 years ago or something. And this is my own personal opinion, I could tell in 2006 that we were wasting our money and time there, that there was going to be no real, you can disagree and I'm happy to talk about it with you later, but they were trying to change a culture and a way of living and introduce rule of law and other concepts that we have here, and it was an impossible task. There was no way in that kind of society that they could change the country or to be, for a variety of structural reasons, to become more like us or something. I mean, it was just not going to happen. And of course, we stayed there another 10 years, probably more than 10 years. But my tour went fine. It was 6 months away, though. It was a long time to be away. A very, very interesting experience. After that, I had a couple more assignments. I went back to Washington, D.C., worked in the Pentagon for a while. I was involved with acquisitions like the F-22 fighter program and other big acquisitions like that, where we were contracting with Lockheed Martin and these other big defense contractors. My job was just to ensure that the contracts were well written and that we were getting what we paid for and all that kind of stuff. And the job of an acquisition lawyer, in my viewpoint, is largely to protect the taxpayers. Having another person who's ensuring that, looking at everything that we're doing and making sure there's competition, we're getting reasonable prices, we're getting what we paid for, enforcing our contract rights and all that. So at least in my little corner of the world, I tried to make sure we were spending your money well. I can't speak for all the rest of the acquisitions and everything else goes on. And frankly, it's better not to even think about it. You just do what's in front of you when you're doing this kind of work. So I went to DC, I worked out of the Pentagon for a while, then at Joint Base Andrews. Then I took my last assignment to Colorado Springs with Schriever Air Force Base, which most folks, it was called Falcon Air Force Base for a while. Most folks haven't heard of it. It's kind of out of town a little ways, and they run a lot of the satellites. GPS satellites are run out of there. It's now a Space Command base. But enjoyed that assignment, and then I retired. They were doing some a little bit early retirement, which is why I served 19 years, not 20. So I did early retirement out of Schriever Air Force Base. I was the senior attorney there, staff advocate, and took the job that I have now, which is working for the Defense Health Agency as a civilian contracts attorney, working remotely out of my house here. So that's my career and experience in a nutshell. I'm sure very different from what most of you all experienced. But I enjoyed my time. It was a good career. At the same time, I would say at the end of it, I was ready to step down and move on. So I'm happy to answer any questions about any of that. If anybody has anything? Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. This may be out of your experience, but how are they handling sexual harassment in the service now?
They, over the course of my career, they really ratcheted up the attention on that topic. Some sexual assault, sexual harassment became a huge focal point. Attorneys, of course, had a significant role in that, but service-wide, there was all kinds of training and attention. They established sexual assault response coordinators for every installation. They established other mechanisms and means for folks to report, both whether you're active duty or whether you're just civilians working in on a post, to be able to report, to be able to be protected, have a certain rights. So so it was very, especially around 2000, late 2010 timeframe, and whatever. In that era, it really became more of an emphasis point. And whether it's effective, is up to, I guess the execution on any particular post and who's in charge and what the commanders do about things and how they treat people, but certainly became a matter of emphasis. Anybody else? Did I use up enough time, Larry?
Erik, what do you do now?
So, yeah,
Who do you work for now?
So I work for the Defense Health Agency, which is one of many defense agencies. I'm an attorney. I do government contract related things, but the DHA runs the TRICARE program and runs the military health system, all the MTF, the military treatment facilities. I'm a TRICARE beneficiary, so it's kind of nice to work for the agency that runs that. But if you're familiar, that's the health benefit for active duty family members, retiree family members, and certain other people. So it's like 9 million beneficiaries of that. So I just day to day, I just answer questions from people, clients, and help review contracts and other things. Do that in the comfort of my office here.
Is there any? You mentioned that the defense agency here locally, is there an office in town? Most of us are retired.
There's no office in town. I kind of attached to this office up in Denver, really. That's where because I was in Colorado Springs, I kind of got a special deal to be able to work remotely. If you have questions about TRICARE, I'm happy to answer them. I know TRICARE pretty well, but if you have TRICARE, I guess most of them might be TRICARE for life.
Larry knows how to get a hold of you.
Larry else had it.
In case we need to, I don't want to look you up in the phone book.
Yes, you can get a hold. Wow.
You moved around quite a bit. How many of those places were your choice versus the government's choice of moving you?
It worked out. So when I first came in, for JAGS at least, we said like, okay, give us a top 10 list of the places you'd like to go. So I gave them my list. They then came back to me with, you can go to, here's your place, Shepherd Air Force Base and like Altus Air Force Base, Texas, Northern Texas, Oklahoma. I said, none of those are on my top 10 list. And then they actually said, hey, wait, you can go to McCord Air Force Base, which was out in the Pacific Northwest, and that was on my list. So I said, I'll take it. After that, I pretty much got to at least have a hand in deciding where I would go. I didn't have complete control over it, but it was nice that they took into consideration places that Shirley and I were interested in going to. We thought about going overseas, we never did. But obviously a lot of folks go to Europe and other overseas locations, but we were mostly northern half of the United States. Okay. Going once. Happy to talk any other time. Oh, I see a hand.
How did you end up in Tucson?
Oh, boy. So we have been down here on vacation a number of times. And when the weather was good, in the spring typically. And to golf or just to be here. And then when I worked out the deal with my employer to say, hey, I had been a supervisory attorney and had a lot of people working for me. I said, I'd like to just give all that up and just be a regular attorney who doesn't have to manage people, and I'd like to work remote. They approved that, and then we said, hey, let's go to Tucson. So we've been there. We liked it. Now the summers have worn us down a little bit, so we will be splitting our time soon between Colorado Springs and here.
I got a question. When I was in basic training, the company commander called me into his office. He said, Jerry Sims, because you didn't mark your boots, I'm going to give you a choice. I'll give you an Article 15, a summary court martial, or a court martial. Of course, I took the Article 15, but I often wondered, what if I had accepted a court martial?
So you made the right choice. If you had, well, then you would have had, I mean, what year was this?
What is it?
What year, when was this?
What, right?
What year, what time, what?
1958.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have had a defense counsel, well, you may have had a defense counsel, but they wouldn't have been an attorney. Back then, I think they just had folks who would get assigned to support. And so you would have had to try to, if you'd gone to a court martial, that ratchets up the potential penalties, right? If you do an Article 15, you can get, busted, in rank, or you can pay a fine or stuff like that. If you go to a court martial, then you're potentially looking at getting discharged or something, less than honorable discharge.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very nice thing. Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go out of order here a little bit. Marco, if you come up. Marco is who provides our paperweights and other things. He does the etching on the plaques out here. He does all of that for us, and he's been doing all of that plaque for free since he's owned the business. And so we wanted to thank him. That's why we brought him in. He doesn't get paid that way. I figured he had to know this. So we have a check for him, $200, just show appreciation.
Rather than have a paperweight, we can arrange it. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Now we'll go to Gordon.
Maybe he's upright. Yeah. Barely.
Good morning, and we went out of order because I would have told Marco about his check before he knew about it, so. I figured we should bring him up first. As of August the 31st, our opening balance was $2,055.21. On the 4th of September, I made a deposit of $96.65. Somebody threw 65 cents in the can. Thank you. On the 12th, the travel club has disbanded, and they had some money in their funds. So we got half of the travel club's money. So I made a deposit of $231.43 from the travel club's ending balance. And if anybody knows people from that, we ought to thank them because it's certainly appreciated. On the 21st, good old Tim and Kay Walter gave me a check for $500. Everybody knows that they're moving who to call.
Yes.
And on the 21st, I made a deposit of $810, and those were for pre-sale on barbecue tickets. For expenses, Dennis Abrams, $68.37 for our donuts. I made a check. And I understand Dennis did not eat a donut today, so there must be some satellite passing over. Something odd in there.
What's a refund?
That's very true. I wrote a check for $25 to Dick Two. He, went to the people who do our logos and paid for a stencil or whatever that device is that makes our logo. I wrote a check to Sharon Bender for $75.28 for potluck supplies, meat. $36.32 to Dick Two for meat. And I wrote a check on the 18th for $50 to the Tech Club. And we're going to drop on some told our Zoom membership, and we're going to parallel onto the Tech Club's membership. So that saves us a lot of money right there. And finally today, a check for $200 to Remarkable for their work in doing the emblems and all for us on a timely basis at no charge to us. Closing balance, $3,438.37 as of the 30th. Questions?
Is Mark Stein not paying for our donuts anymore?
No, Mark Stein made an initial donation of $1,000, and we're paring down from that $1,000 vis-a-vis Dennis.
So he is, yes.
Yes, he is paying for it and has paid for them, prepaid.
Used to pay. Prepay.
Anything else? Thank you, guys.
And they'll be making another deposit. Actually, it'll just be a transfer of funds for tickets for barbecue sales, hang out. Or we sold tickets. Okay. Whole business, fall barbecue, Sharon,
Yes,
anything?
Just want to let everybody know, I can still sell some tickets to them today here if they would like to still come to barbecue on Saturday. So
You have a volunteer?
I do, I have plenty, so thank everybody who's going to help me with this.
Thank you. New business. November, we'll do November potluck first, that's Carol. Anything?
Not really. I have I'm working on the article for the November Suncatcher, and I do have sale dates, but I don't have them with me. So
Okay.
it'll be in the communicator and also in the Suncatcher. Thank you.
Okay, and it'll be on the webpage as well. I'll make sure it gets put on the webpage.
What date? Date?
I believe it's the 14th.
Day before the.
That's the day before Manhattan Dolls.
I also told Carol I can do the books. It's good.
Okay, very good. Manhattan Dolls, one thing I do have on Manhattan Dolls, I know Carol's gonna do uniforms. We're looking for 6 volunteers to help with, Healthy Activities Committee with setup and, help Carol with setting up the uniforms and stuff like we did at the last Manhattan Dolls. So we'll be looking for volunteers for that as well.
And uniforms or memorabilia, if you have a shadow box, you know, uniforms, that you would loan me to hang around the room. Or if you have a memorabilia box, something like that. We've done that in the past, so let me know, give me a call and I can pick it up and, we'll get you, on the wall. Thanks.
Okay, speakers for our upcoming meetings and stuff. One of the things that we discussed at our board meeting was developing a committee of 2 or 3 people from the general membership to help find speakers for our club. Now, I have a few speakers. I have one already lined up for, I believe it's in February. I have them lined up for that. But we're gonna need a speaker for November, December, January, and then the rest of next year. So we lost the best person we had for finding speakers. That was Tom. He knew everybody and he could find speakers at a moment's notice. So what we're looking for is a few volunteers that are willing to step up and just try to find speakers for us. I give you a lot of good ideas of where to go to look for speakers. Anybody who volunteers down at the hospital. We have a VAVS down there, Volunteer Services. And I'm sure they would be more than willing to provide speakers once in a while. We know Dave from DAV. They provide speakers once in a while. So there's different places we can go to find speakers. We just need a committee that can kind of set this up and get it scheduled and talk to these people and get that done. So it doesn't all fall on one or two people. That's what we're trying to get away from. Like I said, Tom was really good at it. You ask him if he had a speaker and he'd call somebody and there'd be a speaker scheduled.
You got Tom's phone number?
Yes, I do. In fact, I can text him anytime now. But, yeah, so that's another source because he will keep coming down here. He's gonna be down here for the barbecue, in fact, on Saturday. So he will be here for that. He bought tickets and so he'll be here for that. So, he is still gonna be involved as well, but he's not really a club member anymore since he moved away. So anyway, we're looking for volunteers for that. So if anybody wants to volunteer for that,
I'll volunteer.
okay? And you're on the board already. So, Bruce is gonna volunteer. So we got a couple of board members that stepped up to volunteer. So if anybody else in the general membership would like to volunteer, you're more than welcome. But that's what we're looking for, somebody that can just kind of help us find those people, those speakers. Now we'll move on to welcoming of new or returning attendees. Do we have any new or returning people? I know we got one on one. Oh, we got one over here.
Like stand up,
Yes, please.
you wanna know?
Who are you?
Your name, when you serve.
Yeah, I served from Army, served from 67 to 96, sergeant major in Vietnam. That's about it.
How long you been here?
I've been here since 2005. I used to come regularly way back.
Okay,
Started playing golf on Wednesdays. Now I've got a torn meniscus, so that's why I'm here. I do, garden, this,
Hey, Larry,
garden.
old neighbors.
Anyway, I'm trying to use to start coming on Wednesday, since it's just one Wednesday a month, I think I can make that one.
okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Everyone's dry here and he wants to be new.
Okay, well, we have somebody, a visitor that's online right now from Sierra Vista. Don't mind that if I speak.
You gotta unmute, David.
David, you want to unmute yourself?
There
How
you
about
go.
now?
Go ahead.
Well, anyway, good morning. Thank you for letting me visit with you folks once a month now. So it's been about a little over a year since we moved down here to Sierra Vista, and we're still involved. I got involved with the DAV here in Sierra Vista, getting involved with their transportation section of bringing veterans to and from hospital appointments up in Tucson and also here. So we got moved into our home and we can get the cars in the garage. So I guess we found home. And it's a little bit cooler here. I thought I'd just throw that out. So anyway, good see you and thank you for letting me attend these meetings once a month with you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, for the good of the cause, anybody have anything for the good of the cause? Of course.
Since it wasn't on the agenda, November 11th is what? It's Veterans Day. And I hope everybody's got that marked on their calendar. Last year, the year before that, for the last 14 years, it's been a great turnout for the community. It's a great chance for the community to say thanks to us and for us to say thanks to the community and farewell to our fallen vets for this past year. It's a great event. Please mark it on your calendar. November 11th, 9:30 in the morning. It's a 1-hour program. It's a good feeling program. The scouts are coming from Sierra Vista. Do our flag ceremony. We have working on a special guest speaker. Our corral will be here. The pickleball club will be hosting donuts. It's a big deal in 1 hour. So mark your calendars, be there, wear your shirts, wear your hats, and hopefully we can use name tags so people know who we are in the community. Because it's a proud community, a generous community, and just mark November 11th. Look for you.
Same date every year. And Dan does a great job with that program. Okay, and one other thing we have coming up that falls on a bad date, it's on October 5th, which is this coming Saturday. We have Missing in America project out at the Veterans Cemetery. Starts at 10 o'clock, runs from 10 to 11. They have a 1-hour program. So if anybody wants to go to that or can go to that, you're more than welcome to go there as well. I happen to be on the Cemetery Foundation, so I will be there. And so that's another event that's coming up. Anything else? Like I said, it's a short meeting. We didn't have a whole lot to take care of, so if there's nothing else.
You want to let Marco talk?
Just a minute.
Did you want to let Marco talk?
No. Well, Marco, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. I didn't expect this. Bob asked me to come by and give kind of a brief deal on what was happening, but I really didn't expect this. I do pastoral work down at the Gospel Rescue Mission, and I ran this by him and I said, you know what, can I go down there and visit my friends down at the Sunflower Vet community, or Sunflower Community Veterans Club? And they said, yeah, sure, take your time. So getting down here, I was thinking, you know what, I wasn't sure what was happening or what was going on. I just know that you guys have a special place in my heart. I started Remarkable 3.5 years ago, and you guys were a client of somebody that was already doing it. So kind of fell into my lap, and they gave me to you guys, or they gave you guys to me. And I just started. That's you guys. You're special to me because I learned how to run a business. Like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of money being transacted, but that was okay because in my heart, you guys were number one for me. The first client I've ever had. So this means so much to me. I'm glad to serve. I'm a vet myself. My dad was a vet. My grandfather was a vet. He's buried there at the Marana Cemetery. I've been here a few times. I've been able to talk to a few people, and I know that that plaque means something. I happened to run across a widow that I was just looking at it, trying to see where the plaques were going once I finished them, and she just happened to walk by, and we started to talk, and she just reminded me how much that little plaque meant to her to go up there and see her husband every day. So that solidified it for me. And this was just a blessing. I appreciate it. It's going to go right back into the business to help get some things rolling and just keep it going. So thank you guys. God bless you, and I appreciate it, everything. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, then we will stand adjourned.